All right, guys, so we're going to be looking at a second example now, and we are going to just try to run through a little bit faster than what we did with example one. All right, so it says given g of x equals 4x plus 1 over x minus 3, determine g of 0. So we're doing the solution to example 2 now. Now again, I'm just reiterating what that function is. G of x is equal to 4x plus 1 divided by x minus 3. Now in part 1, they're asking us to determine g of 0. So g of 0 simply means we are replacing x with the value of 0. So that is going to be 4 times 0 plus 1 divided by 0 minus 3. So that is going to give us 1 over negative 3, which is the same thing essentially as negative 1 over 3. So that is what the value of g of 0 would be. So we're finished with that. Let's take a look at part 2. Now it says determine the value of x when g of x is equal to 0. Now remember, g of x is a fractional function. And in order for a fractional function to be equal to 0, its numerator must be equal to 0. So we solve for x here. So 4x equals, carry over the positive 1, it becomes negative. And x is equal to negative 1 over 4, which is the same thing as saying negative a quarter. All right. Part 3, it says determine the value of x when g of x is undefined. And remember, when a fraction is undefined, the denominator is equal to 0. And g of x is a function that is in fraction form. So for part 3, in order for the function to be undefined or give you a math error, x minus 3 must be equal to 0. So x would be equal to positive 3. And that will be the first 3 parts of the solution to example 2. Now let's go ahead and take a look at part 4 of the question that is asking us to determine the inverse. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and determine the inverse of this function, which is in fractional form. So let's go ahead with this inverse. So for part 4, again, the original function is g of x, which is 4x plus 1 over x minus 3. That's the original function. So our first step is to let y equal this function. And then the next step would be to interchange x and y. And that simply means to switch the values of x and y. So we're going to have x equals 4y plus 1 over y minus 3. And then we need to solve for y. Very simple. Now again, I'm going to rewrite this. And I'm going to stress once more that when you're going to solve for y now, whatever the denominator is, put that in bracket, because again, without the brackets, you're going to get it wrong. So ensure that you put the denominator in bracket before we decide to cross multiply. So what we're going to have here is x times y minus 3, which is equal to 4y plus 1. So we're going to expand there. X times y is xy, and x times negative 3 is negative 3x. And we're just going to put back the right hand side. Now, we're going to put all the terms with y's on one side. I already have xy as a term with y on this side. So I'm simply going to move the positive 4y, carry it over on that side. It's going to become negative 4y. And then move the minus 3x and carry it over. So I essentially want all the terms with y on one side and all the other terms on the other side. So xy, this is positive 4y, it becomes negative 4y. This is minus 3x, I'm carrying it over. It becomes positive 3x. And I'm now going to factorize a side that has the y's in it. So what is common in the two terms, xy and negative 4y, is y. And x minus 4 would be in the bracket because y times x is xy, and y times negative 4 is negative 4y. 3x plus 1. And of course, to make y the subject, which is to solve for y, I'm simply going to divide by x minus 4. And this is what the inverse would be. So in part, so therefore, the inverse of g of x is going to be equal to 3x plus 1 divided by x minus 4. And that would be the inverse of g of x. So original function g of x, all of these steps were in pursuit of finding the inverse of g of x, which is that. So I've answered part 4 of the question. Now part 5 is asking us to find the inverse of g of 2. And in order to do that, we would have needed to get the inverse, which we have here. So I'm just going to move this out of the way because this sheet here, because the only thing left for us is to find the inverse of g of 2. So we're going to go ahead and do that, but I want to keep the inverse here so we can clearly see it. So let's go ahead and find the inverse of g of 2. And this is part 5, the final part of the question. So since inverse of g of x is equal to 3x plus 1 over x minus 4, then the inverse of g of 2 simply means wherever x is in the inverse, we're replacing it with 2. Because when you compare this and this, you realize x is coming out and 2 is going in. So wherever we see x in the inverse, we're replacing that with 2. It's as simple as that. So 3, 2, 6. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. That's 7 over negative 2, which is a negative fraction. And 2 into 7 3 times, remainder 1 over 2. So that will be the answer to part 5 of this second example. So again, as much as you want, you can always pause the video when you're watching it over and over and just focus on areas that you're not very clear with yet. But over time, it's going to become very simple to you. All right. So I hope you found this video insightful, and I'll see you guys on the next video.